and the basically text was the illusion of free markets. So during the 19th and 20th century, the belief that free markets is the best form of commerce trading mechanism, this belief has emerged rapidly. But upon looking at the intricate details of the mechanism, we find that a free market is the most regulated form of industry today. But still people believe that it is the most fair form of system. So from here we can examine the notion that what makes people believe that although it's one of the most regulated form, why is it fair? So we'll examine that why, if an industry or a phenomena is disciplined and regulated, how does it create a sense of liberty in the people? So in order to examine that, we will take the case of 17th century police in Paris, in France. So what we have is a large set of documents of 19 police commissioners working across different regions of France, and the account taken from them is of different times, of different months of the year. So what we observed was that, first I'll have to tell you about the routine of these police commissioners in 17th century. So on every Friday or second Friday, they used to present a report in the court, and that report was, within that week what they observed was all the violations of the ordinance. And then every week they used to file that report in the court. So we'll take one or two such cases. So one case was filed. In that report, what were the police commissioners, what they filed maximum number of times was that they observed that people were not sweeping their sidewalks or the front of their house. This was reported 50% of the time as the violation. The second most reported case by the police commissioners was people throwing fecal matters on the sidewalk. Don't ask me how they did that. And the third one was that people drinking late night in the wine shops. And the fourth one was people keeping flower pots on their windowsills, which could fall in case of wind, and on the people walking. So this was the fourth major reported crime which the police commissioners report. And likewise, and yes, if you keep a big stone in front of your house or any box which could cause obstruction in the on the road, so this was also reported. So what we get a sense is that at that time there was no major crime happening. But what was happening, also the commerce industry, the market was also regulated in some manner. But the rules which were laid down were that if you want to sell any grain, you have to sell it only in the market. If you have bought a bread, it cannot be resold. And yes, you have to maintain a minimum stock of bread in your bakery at every time, at any point of time. But during the happy times, these rules were never enforced. So all these rules were enforced when there was shortage of grains. Okay. And in those times also, what were the type of violations reported related to markets? So out of the 352 violations reported by police commissioners, we have 5 which are remotely related to market or economy. The first one reported was that 4 peddlers were creating noise in the market and were obstructing the traffic. So it was market related. That was the first violation. The second violation was that a cobbler was working on Sunday, which is a holiday. He was not supposed to work, so he was fined $1. It's like $1. So this is the second violation. And likewise, these were the violations. The only major violation was that one fruit seller was conned that he went out to buy eggs. So the going price at that time was 45 livres. Livres is the currency at that point of time. So one of the person comes to him and said that, see, I have got very good quality eggs, very huge eggs full of protein, vitamins, whatnot, but they are priced at 60 livres. So the person says that, okay, show me the eggs. And when he goes to see the eggs, he finds that these are just normal eggs and refused it. So the transaction never took place in any case, but still that person went to the police commissioner and reported that he at least tried to con me. And that was the most major economy related crime that occurred in those times. So we get a sense that although there was discipline, but it was never enforced. But in times of crisis, what happened was the rule established was enforced during those times. So what was that? Every grain producer has to sell it in the market. This was done because at that time the communication was not so good. So if there are scattered markets, then what will happen is there will be a price differentiation. One person selling wheat at some other price and second person selling at some other price. So if all are consolidated at one place, the seller has an option to visit the buyer has an option to visit each seller and determine the fair price. Also, the police was the only body who used to check for the grains, the quality of grains. So in that terms, the regulation ensured that the buyers get the best of price and the best of quality. So this was the very first phenomena this was the very first of the case which infused the notion that regulation will create liberty for the people. Okay, but this was in 17th century. Over the next 3-4 centuries, it has the notion has remained the same, that if a market is regulated, it will be fair to maximum number of people. But now the content has changed in it, which Anubhav will discuss.
Yeah. So moving forward to the 17th century, somewhere around 1760s, what we see is les messieurs attendance in marketing case. It's a bit arbitrary, whatever. But basically he says that, as he mentioned, that initially police was the only governing body that controlled all the commerce and any crime related to anything at all. What this guy came and did was he put two people over there. So one was the Governor General that actually oversaw the military, the defense side, and one was the intendant, who looked over the civil government, essentially anything related to commerce, anything related to trade, that's it. So it basically divided into two. But what we see over here is that there is a lot of constraint in the free markets. What Vipul just mentioned before me was that, okay, there was discipline and which led to liberty. Over here what we see is that the free markets have a lot of constraint. So the autocratic approach was extended to a highly regimented. When I say highly, it's of an upscale level. So we look at the ordinances that were passed. So all foreign commerce was prohibited in the French Islands. Was at least in force for 50 years. After that, they allowed the Asian port ships to come in. But still, it was very restricted. The butchers and bakers had to take the licenses from the intendant. So we see the license rights coming in at a lower scale, but still it is there. And the taverns, as mentioned, that it was a very high crime to drink during the night and all. The regulations were increased. The scope was increased. Fines were increased. But what Mr. Lane Mercier actually missed out was that free markets need to have a free policy. You can't actually regulate anything. But what this guy went forward and did was that he himself set the prices for bread, meat and other commercial goods. So there is a whole lot of contrary opinion over here that there is the essential free market in the 1760s. And another thing was that this was not imposed by the kingdom or anything else. In certain other counties, as you would say, people were doing other things. There were taxes for the privileged class and all. But this guy just went himself and made forward a police district. So commercial activity, you police it, you add on liberty and you say, yeah, this is a free market because I'm giving you order, because I'm providing a sense of, let's say, security. I will take a bit of the profit and you have a market in which you can trade freely. So the free market term actually transpired from something where the prices are determined to something where the risk is reduced. And the guy who is actually reducing the risk gets a cut. So it's an overall redistribution of profits. And who else to better show us that than the Chicago Board of Trade? A strict police reigns masquerading under free market trade. So that is actually what it is. I've explained in 2 slides, but it actually means that one line to go forward with it. So there were bucket shops initially in Chicago. But bucket shops were that small traders who took very less commission. You went to them, you bought the goods, some kind of barter with money involved. It's upon you, but there was no central market of where you could go and trade. These guys came, litigation started happening. There were 2 major cases after which the government actually granted them a monopoly. Okay, it's a privileged private organization and unto themselves. They govern themselves. Okay, so the government said we can only regulate. We can't stop you. You guys regulate yourselves. It went to a whole different extent that, so this is a case that Justice Oliver went to. So these are the 2 cases that he stamped the approval on them to regulate their own businesses. They had majorly 3 disciplinary mechanisms that he used. Again, we are seeing a lot of order in the markets that were there. It's not an issue of free markets, it's just that we're providing you safety and security so you can do free trade. There was a judicial authority again to the circuits court that was developed. So anything that happened as a breach of trade was referred to the Chicago Board of Trade. They had their own judicial bench or something of that sort. They did the litigation. Appointed inspectors of grains and the waiters. Okay, so what essentially is, you are not going and seeing the grain quality. They are devising. We have certain standards. This is A grade, this is B grade, this is C grade, this is the price. our guys will wait, you just have to put in your order. Again, a level of order is imposed. The third one, authority to sell and govern through the internal rules and mandate. We are a body unto ourselves, the government can't do anything, we regulate ourselves. And then so now comes the next problem. These were the main, I'd say, leverages that they use. Then comes what they actually did with it. So first is regulating price and entry. Wow, free markets, we have entry barriers already. There was a 10,000 K initiation fee that time. So a bucket shop can't actually just go and say, I want to be part of the market. And moreover, what they did? Fixed commissions. So a trader who is more efficient, who is more well versed in the market, can't actually get more commission. He's in the market, it's a free system for them. They get to have a part, he gets to have a fixed commission. They regulated the trading hours even. So that is where the Chinese gong thing comes in, that how did they do? There was a privileged trading problem. Privileged trading are actually the puts and calls, options, futures, derivatives that we do next term. To reduce the trading hours, no one actually listened to them. Okay, that will keep on trading and everything goes on. So they devised a very simple thing. They'll come with the Chinese gong and start banging it, so no one can actually trade. So that is the bell of the trading hour where it is devised from. Regulating options. So the main belief at that point was that options and futures will actually reduce the floor price of the commodities that are being traded there. And these guys tried a lot. They tried for 3 cases of 4 different litigations, but in the end they just couldn't stop the privileged class from doing their own. Privileged class, I mean the options and futures trading, the puts and calls. They just couldn't stop it, so then the CFIC commission came in and they started regulating it. So another layer for options, and we have a normal trade. Then regulating corners. So this is actually one thing that they did, which made some sense. Corners are something, so let's think of it that way, that you guys are producers. I go to you, I say, I want an order for, let's say, 10 kgs or some grain. And after that, I enforce something or I do something that you're not able to give me that 10 kgs. But that order has been fulfilled in the market. And these guys can regulate and these guys can banish you from the market, and then you have no place to sell. Because essentially they have reduced the bucket shops to such a low level that they don't have any customers. There's a demand supply and it's only in the market. So actually what I'm doing, I'm causing you all in a free market to give me the grains at a cheaper price. But they try to reduce it, and which is a good point in that. So the second part, regulating bucket shops. They are gone. Kirana stores, bye bye. Smaller quantities, cheaper commissions. And these traders are actually very, very smart. What they did was, fine, we have a market where we can get large commissions, we have large buyers. What we'll do is, we'll go and buy from the bucket shops. They charge a small commission. So we make an arbitrage at 2 points. First with the market, second with the bucket shops. Excellent for them. But as you can see, 1899, they were reduced. Second comes to try to stop the information dissemination. So essentially what happens is, we have Chinese walls nowadays. Everything is in a very secure form. Earlier I was just picking up a phone and saying, hi man, this is the price, this is what's happening. If you want to trade in an ancillary market, do it for. So they actually physically cut off the phone lines from the exchange of sorts and said that if we don't give the bucket shop the current trading price, how will the traders be able to arbitrage? So that is what happened over there. Futures trading, this is a whole new ballgame that started happening. So what does futures trading mean? So futures trading means you have to think the quantity and anything. And you're saying that, okay, I'll buy it at a future. Taking the price card, you're saying I'll buy it at a future. But the problem with it is these 3. It's the quality. You don't know that the farmer will be able to produce at a quality that you want. Second is the trust, the farmer's delivery date. You don't know that he'll be able to give you the quantity at that point of time. Then comes the merchant liquidity. You don't know if he has enough resources to even produce. This exchange promises that. It says, okay, you hedge with us, you give us some money, we'll ensure that you get the commodities, because at the end point, the farmers are rendered fungible. We have a huge supplier base. The farmer is simply a person, or let's say a machine who's producing products. We don't care. We have a large source. You supply the products. You just make an exchange contract with us. That's it. So they're trying to cut off everything else, putting it in a restricted flow, adding order instead of free markets. So the order is a replacement for free markets, however. Then there's a policing power exercised by the board. That is the essential redistribution of anything or anyone who went apart from that was cut out. They removed the commissions, they started litigations, and as for the wealth went, they were a very large number. And now we come to the contemporary exchanges. So the layers of complex regulation and intricate rules to distribute wealth. Two cases will be discussed over here. One is the 1990 case of flipping. So as you know, in IPOs, there is a 30 or 60 day holding period after which no one can trade, right? You have ceiling price and so it's stabilized after 30 or 60 days. Or it was that the institutional investors were actually removed from this rule. They can trade. After the IPO happens, there will be a huge supply glut, a demand glut, because everyone wants, there's a new share in the market, we want the share. But the retail investors are not allowed, because if they do, it's called flipping. Then institutional investors can go on and freely trade. The retail investors are stopped from doing so. So what it is a distribution consequence or disadvantage is the retail buyers. So what everyone wants is economies of scale. What the government essentially wants is that transfer the economies of scale to the end customer. If there are 10 shops, club them in one, transfer the economies of scale to the end customer's value is generated overall the flow. But who loses out? The guys termed fungible, the little farmers who are clubbed in a group. Then came the SEC could not prohibit but could only regulate. So what this essentially means is that it can forbid the rule. It can't forbid the application of it. Forbid the rule across the flow, that's fine. But you can't forbid it for different people at different classes. Then came the 1963 case of antitrust and competition. So this basically is that OTC bond dealers and anti-competitive practices. So as went forward with the exchange part that they were actually cutting off the bucket shops, OTC is over the counter. They don't do it on exchange. It's like I go to the market and I find a guy who's actually willing to buy and sell. So they cut off the communication lines over there. So what we are trying to get at over here is that exchanges, they are a system of imposing order on a free market. What they provide you is with security, they provide you with safety, they provide you with a platform where commodities are readily available. But what they take away is not from you, it's from the guy who's producing. They take away a small part, they make it fungible, and then you get the products. So it is a very elaborately constructed illusion of free markets that is actually happening in the trades, which people just said that it was less at the earlier times because exchanges weren't that developed. No one had the idea to do it. These guys came and said, wow, nice idea, we'll just contain arbitrage. Now Vipul will go forth and
what I'm going to talk about is the third article which we have, it's called the penitentiary system. So we are dealing with a phenomenon here that suddenly in 1970s, 1980s, the number of people in prisons are increasing, exponentially they are increasing. So I'm trying to come to that to the free market. Okay? So let's see what a free market is. So you have supply, you have demand, and this is your price, you have price, this is your. Now I would say price is the most important information a free market conveys. It's the language of free market. So how is it? Let's take an example. Let's take an example first. Okay? Let's see the single screen theaters across the country. So if every theater has 120 rupees ticket, so I go to this theater and I see it's 120 and it appeals to me. I value this movie at 120. Right? That's why I am willing to pay this. But it's household. So what the price is supposed to clear this market? It's supposed to clear. I mean, I shouldn't be your this market. The price should carry that information that this is not your kind of movie. It is 350 bucks. You don't have that much money with you to watch. So if price is contained, that kind of disturbs the equilibrium of this. Okay, so that's what the free market philosophy is. The price. This hike. This is Chicago School of Economics. Okay. So, what does the government do in a free market? What is the role of the government? The government is only, according to the free market, the government only provides property rights. So, what is a property right? So, for every exchange to happen, you are giving me, I am giving you money, you are giving me a good. I am buying a house from you. Tomorrow, if you come with guns and take that house away from me, the market is not functioning. So the government the only role of the government is to protect the law and order. That's what happens in the free market. That's how the free market is built on. That's how free market can function. So that's one thing. So this also means we need to allocate resources, right? Whoever values this resource the most, it should go to him. In that case, there might be someone who values that for let's say 240 bucks. So the price should come from that information that is 240 and it should go to him. Otherwise there will be inefficient rationing at that point. If it's at 120, I might get a ticket. There is a person who values it at 240. He comes, he won't get a ticket. So that is an inefficient rationing happening over there. Okay, so it allocates resources. So what is the government supposed to do is to ensure property rights. So we are coming to 1980s now, 1980s. It's just an extension of all this, what is happening in 1980s. So what Reagan brings into picture is supply side economics. Now you have a supply and a demand. So you know government's only function is not about protecting property rights, it also imposes taxes. So now when the government is taxing, what happens? This would be the price the buyers would be paying, okay, and this would be the price the sellers would get. And this particular portion is lost. This particular portion, the market is lost. It's called a deadweight loss. It happens every time, right? It happens every time that there's some kind of tax. This is like this, okay? There's some kind of tax. This part of the portion is lost in the market. It is nowhere. These sellers are gone out of the market, these buyers are not willing to buy. So this part is lost. So what Reagan tries to say is, we have been taxing so much, and this would be your tax revenue. This particular portion would be your tax revenue. Okay? This particular portion. So we have been taxing so much, the deadweight loss has become more and more and more, and our tax revenues are falling. And our tax, not just the tax revenues are falling, people are losing the willingness to work hard. So if you see, if this is the tax rate, this is the tax rate, the taxing net, and this is your revenue. It goes up and it comes in. From the graph itself you can see that the portion is decreasing because it was this much in the beginning, it becomes more and more thin. Correct? So this is called a Laffer spread. So Arthur Laffer points it out that the American economy is at this point. Okay, where the tax revenues are started falling. So it has to decrease taxes. It shouldn't tax for the free market economy to work properly. So this is when the supply side economics is coming into picture. Reagan also takes in this philosophy. He nails this philosophy and implements it. So in 1980s, all income taxes are reduced, capital gains tax are reduced, everything is reduced, and free market is starting. Okay. So we have this beautiful picture of free market coming again and again. Okay. So what are we not seeing here? What are we not seeing? This all sounds fine. What are we not seeing? We are not seeing externalities. Okay. So one externality would be, let's say a company is producing aluminium or something. Okay. Some production is happening. So it has supply curve would be the cost, right? The cost. So cost is represented some supply curve. And it has a demand curve. Demand curve is how much the buyers want to buy. This supply curve only has a private cost. It has included all its supply, all its raw materials, all its transaction costs is there, correct? So this is reflected. Now what is not reflecting is the pollution cost. That is the factories producing gases or throwing it out in the atmosphere. So that cost is not reflected. So actually the supply, this would be the quantity produced when only private cost is here. So when you include the pollution cost, it should go up. The supply should go up, this should be the quantity produced. The social optimum quantity should be less than whatever the market is producing. So this has to be taken care of. This has to be taken. Someone has to pitch in, tax them, bring this to this level, and this has to be taken care of. But we are not doing anything right now. We are letting free market be free market, the beautiful law, let it be. So let's imagine like this, that some guy, he produces pollution in the night, so they produce a lot of shit in the night, okay? He produces a lot of shit in the night. Some guy is coming out, cleaning this up. In the night, he just cleans up. market beautiful philosophy is there. So we attribute this kind of, the clean atmosphere we have to the free market. So you see what's happening, right? Exactly what Mr. Rath was explaining that day. We think what's inside the phone is intrinsic to it. The free market is not intrinsic to the free market. There's someone coming out and cleaning in the night. We have no idea of it. Okay? Same thing is education also. What is education? There will be demand for education, there will be supply of education, there will be demand for education. But then it has a positive externality. If I am more educated, I tell you, I teach others, people get more and more knowledge, and people get more aware, they elect better governments, and crime rates go low. So the actual value of education is much more. The value is reflected in the demand curve. So the demand curve should be higher for this. Okay? Correct? So the quantity of education supply should be higher. The free market would be supplying only a lower quantity of education. So Sarkar has to subsidize education. It has to start more schools. It has to start more educated programs. So this also has to be taken care of. These are not taken care of. We just so actually Sarkar is doing this. Sarkar is doing this. In the night it will come and drag this curve upwards. So in the morning when you wake up, there's nothing. It's again. It's fine. It's fine over there. So that thing is happening. You understand the illusion. Okay. Now I told you about economics. I told you about equality. So if people are not educated, free market believes that it's a meritocracy kind of thing, right? All have equal opportunities. But how can everyone have equal opportunities when you are not economically sane? As let's say cat. We all came through cat, right? So how can we say it was equal in this sense? My parents were rich, they could send me to a tuition center, I could have been trained much better. There's another person who was not, whose parents were not that rich. So for a free market to work, these kind of programs should be there. The government should pitch in and give that parents some money to help the children come up. So equality of opportunity is maintained by the government. Free market as itself is not anything, it can't sustain. It's just an illusion, it can't sustain. It needs the government. It's like a child. It sits in the night and someone has to clean it. And the most important point is the invisible hand, right? The invisible hand does not wipe its own ass. There's someone else wiping it. So that's the case. Now issue is what has happened? Suddenly the crime rates in the country has increased. How is the crime rate increasing? Because there is no one helping education. The government is not investing to clear poverty. It is not investing in educational reform programs. So the crime rate increases. So that's why you see the number of prisoners in the prison increases. Exponentially it's increasing. Never before. They are building more and more prisons. Okay. So that's one thing. So what's happening? So what would happen if this continues? If this continues, what would happen? I'll just take one minute. What would happen? So when the youth is not employed, there's some kind of an army that sets it in between, right? It becomes a social dynamite. People start, drug trafficking, human trafficking, all this are part of it. And so how is the government dealing with this? Whenever there are more offenders, they put them in the jail. So a French revolution kind of phenomenon. There are new basins built, right? The basin was thrown down saying that the feudal system was creating inequality. We will create a new market, the free market, where everyone is treated equal, and the basin was thrown down. And there's a new basin coming up here. What do you see in this article? There's a new basin. And it's multiplying. So every child whose father is locked in that prison, every woman whose husband is locked in that prison would take up arms. And these are not prisons only of these stone brick prisons, they are prisons of poverty, inequality, for which we have to speak. They'll come down and put all this down. Free market can't sustain like this. Free market won't sustain like this. So, and one more thing, the last thing I want to say. Look at this. This is the most free market that ever existed in the history of the world. Look at this board. This is from Industrial Revolution, the beautiful board. From this foul rain, the greatest stream of human industry flows out to fertilize the whole human world. From this filthy sewer, pure gold flows. Here humanity attains its most complete development and its most brutish. Here civilization works miracles and a civilized man is almost turned into savage. You see the dialectic. Foul sewer, gold flows out. Civilization is working miracles, man is turned into savage. So that's what's happening. So The free market cannot sustain itself. It needs a role. It needs a parent.
So now coming back to what could be a modern day parallel to the free market. Now the failure of GATT, General Agreement of Trade, and because essentially why do we want to achieve a free market? To facilitate trade. So earlier till prior to 1994 there was General Agreement of Trade and Tariffs, which broke down and was formed into WTO, World Trade Organization, and post the failure of 2000 Doha negotiations, WTO is a failure. So now what countries are doing in order to achieve a global free market, they are signing free trade agreements with each other. That is like increased around 10 times in the last 10 years. So taking the case of India has recently signed free trade agreements with Japan, Korea, ASEAN. These are the three major economies with which India has trade agreements. So now essentially what happens in a trade agreement is that we have a product line of 11,000 items and the partner country has also some list, and we both agree that okay, we'll slash the import duties in this manner on these items, and accordingly it is reciprocated. So if we closely analyze India's free trade agreements with these countries, what we find is the commodity which is traded in most quantity, the import duty remains the same, and the commodity which is not traded, the import duties are slashed. Like for example, taking the case of India and Japan, it was signed in 2011 January. We import electronic items and machinery from Japan, and the import duty on those items stays as it is. Now if you want to import oranges from Japan, then the duty is slashed from 30% to 0%. So essentially what comes out after analyzing all these trade agreements is that it is just an illusion of trying to achieve a free market. Essentially the developed countries are trying to seep into the developing markets under the name of free markets, because what developing nations do is to employ protectionist policies to protect themselves, and under the banner of free markets, essentially what a developed nation is saying, remove all those barriers and create a level playing field for us. So our hypothesis is actually it's an illusion of free market. There is no freedom in the free market.